The human brain is complex and has superior processing capabilities compared to any electronic computer, at least up to the present moment. It can allow your senses to go far beyond normal limits through infinite imagination. Many people believe that the brain has more potential than we currently know, even more than what it itself might think. In some aspects, we actually know more about distant regions of the galaxy than we do about our own brain. Are you curious about how the brain works, or what creates the difference in intelligence between a genius and an ordinary person? Could a person possess extraordinary abilities based solely on the power of their brain? These are the questions we will try to explore in today's video. The true power of our brain. We will begin here in Seattle, Washington, USA. Researchers working at the University of Washington's Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences have published the results of a special study on the human brain. It revealed that a baby, at birth, can learn any spoken language in the world, meaning it inherently possesses a superhuman ability right from birth. The study indicates that newborns have truly remarkable intelligence. They can actually learn and memorize even the tiniest movements made upon their bodies. Worldwide, there are about 800 different spoken languages and sounds used relatively widely. But most of us, as adults, use only about 40 of these speech sounds. It's astonishing that a newborn baby can hear and distinguish differences among all over 800 such sounds. Children are endowed with perception from the very beginning, even if they don't truly understand it. Have you noticed these sounds? When a child is learning to speak, they aren't babbling meaninglessly. If you listen carefully and slowly, you'll realize the baby is trying to repeatedly imitate a similar sound, a certain word or phrase in communication they hear daily, repeating it over and over until they get it right and produce that magical sound. Looking into a newborn's brain is like looking at a sponge, the most complex structure in the world. It can truly absorb everything from its surroundings, which then gradually gets filtered and lost as it develops into an adult dot in proportion to body size. A newborn's brain is much larger than that of an adult. A newborn's brain weighs 370 to 390 down, accounting for 12 to 13% of body weight, while an adult's brain weighs 1,400 grams, making up 2.3 to 2.8% of body weight. A supercomputer is inside our heads. What we know about it today is the result of millions of years of evolution, thousands of years of recorded history, and hundreds of years of modern research. Do you think we truly understand this mass of matter inside our own bodies? The answer is sadly no doubt in this world. There are two greatest and most difficult to explain mysteries. First is the question of the universe's origin and the beginning of life. The second is when you look into a mirror and suddenly realize you are truly conscious yet you don't know why you're conscious, where it comes from, how it functions, or whether it ever disappears. Then you'll realize the brain is the most complex object in the universe we know. What's happening in the brain every second, every minute? It remembers, stores, and retrieves necessary information. Every daily action, like breathing, drinking a cup of coffee, or sleeping, stimulates the brain. Perhaps the best example to help us understand the workings of the human brain is a story from nearly 200 years ago, which we will now explore. The story of a man who lost more than half of his brain and miraculously survived. In 1848, this man was leading his crew in building a new railway line outside Cavendish, Vermont. His job was to pack explosives into drilled holes, then use an iron rod to tamp it down and trigger the explosion to blast rocks and clear the way for new rail segments. On September 13, 1848, Gage was working as usual. But while talking to another worker, he accidentally slammed the iron rod he was holding into a rock. The rod sparked, hit the explosive charge in the hole, and detonated. The rod then shot out of position, flew violently into Gage's left cheek, through the roof of his mouth and into his brain, and exited through the top of his skull. If you had witnessed this scene, you surely wouldn't believe Gage could survive. The injury was truly horrific. However, after a few minutes, a miracle occurred. Gage regained consciousness and could speak. People quickly took Gage to rest and waited for a doctor. 30 minutes after the accident, Dr. John Martin Harlow finally arrived and couldn't believe what he saw. Gage was sitting upright on a chair outside a hotel, talking to people around him, with a bloody iron rod about 1 meter long, 3 centimeters in diameter, weighing 6 kilograms, covered in blood and brain tissue, sticking out of his head. It had pierced his skull, gone through the frontal lobes of his brain, destroyed a significant portion of his brain tissue, and pushed his left eyeball out of its socket. Everyone thought such a wound would be fatal, but Gage survived. He lived for another 12 years, though his personality changed dramatically. This incident taught scientists a crucial lesson. The brain has a remarkable ability to reorganize itself after injury, a phenomenon now known as neuroplasticity. Even after losing a large part of his brain, Gage could still function, though his behavior and personality were altered. This case demonstrated that different brain regions are responsible for various functions, and when one area is damaged, others can sometimes compensate. But Gage's story is just one example. The brain's complexity means we may never fully understand it because it constantly changes over time. We know it's too complex to be fully explored, but we can learn more about it by studying the brains of exceptional individuals, those who surpass us, or more precisely, extraordinary people. What makes an individual stand out in intelligence, emotion, or wisdom? What makes them a genius? Does their brain reveal some hidden secret? Is there something concealed within? At the University of California in June 2018, Tannis was receiving his graduation diploma in proud academic regalia. But unlike other students, Abraham earned his degree at just 15 years old. He is one of the youngest graduates in history, a true prodigy. Such cases raise questions. Why are geniuses born? Is there something special about how a genius's brain develops? It's not necessarily innate or inherited from previous generations, but certainly influenced by certain factors. If we could discover this, the potential to help more people unlock genius-level abilities and better exploit their brain's potential would be enormous. Could genius potential lie dormant within each of us, somewhere deep in our brains? I will show you evidence of that about a man who was not born a genius, but became one when he was nearly 40 years old. Here he is, Derek Amato, a famous pianist and musician in the United States. He is often mentioned for his incredible talent in composing and performing piano music. Amato was born on November 19, 1966, in Colorado. In his youth, he was an ordinary student with nothing remarkable. As an adult, Amato held various jobs to make a living. Everything continued with the usual grind of life. Nothing special until a fateful day. In October 2006, Derek Amato visited his parents in his hometown. He and some friends organized a small backyard barbecue. Here, before the grilling began, Amato thought of a game of catch. This jump caused Amato to hit his head on the bottom of the swimming pool, resulting in a concussion. Friends quickly pulled him out. However, at this point, Amato was in a semi-conscious state. His mother took him to the emergency room, where doctors diagnosed Amato with a traumatic brain injury, losing 35% of his hearing in the left ear, along with memory impairment. a significant injury, expected to require considerable recovery. Time, but strangely, right after the accident, Amato recovered, and his health nearly returned to normal. Doctors were extremely surprised and decided to let Amato recover at home. To overcome the shock of the accident, he decided to visit a close friend's house to relax, and that was the very moment a genius was born. As he walked into his friend's house, he saw a piano standing ready in the middle of the room. It was one of those moments when you don't need to know anything. It was set up for me to touch it. I placed my fingers on the keys, sat down, and became proficient and absorbed, playing until 2 a.m. When I closed my eyes, I saw black and white structures moving from left to right. In fact, they represented in my mind a continuous flow of musical notation. Although Amato had previously practiced and played guitar, his musical level was only average, and he didn't know how to play the piano at all. He had never even touched a piano before. Yet now, Amato has become a renowned pianist frequently, giving major performances and mastering as many as 8 different instruments. Whenever people hear these melodious tunes, many still wonder, where did his miraculous ability come from? In just one night, without going through a single basic piano lesson, a musical genius was born. I'll tell you the secret now. The answer is a condition called Savant syndrome, also known as acquired Savant syndrome. Simply put, after certain types of brain injury or nervous system damage, an ordinary person suddenly acquires special skills they weren't previously aware of. In Amato's case, the fall likely weakened the activity of his left brain hemisphere while stimulating the right hemisphere, which is responsible for conscious artistic tasks, unleashing its potential to the maximum. The special abilities Amato possesses indicate that even if we aren't born geniuses, our brains still harbor hidden, unexplored strengths. So the question now is, how can we unlock this inherent genius ability and activate it whenever we want? Imagine if this were possible, what a breakthrough it would be in human development. One day, each person could walk into a room with options to become an Einstein, Mozart, or Picasso, depending on their preference. Sounds crazy, but also very exciting. Of course, becoming a genius would come at a cost, and we don't yet know how much we'd have to sacrifice. I don't wish for any of us to suffer a swimming pool accident to activate our inner genius. Moreover, what if the genius gift bestowed by the brain isn't used by a scholar or an artist, but falls into the hands of a criminal, worse yet, a serial killer? All you need to know is that these criminals are infamous. In the world of cinema and real life, we have many such examples. Florida State Prison, January 21st, 1989, just days before the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy was to be executed. Officials revealed he had confessed to taking at least 30 lives before arriving at this prison. The impending execution would end a horrific crime spree that had lasted over a decade. Without needing deep understanding, we immediately recognize him as the perfect example of a psychopathic, twisted, evil, aggressive, relentless, brutal, or ugly criminal. But Ted Bundy had none of these traits. Instead, he was handsome, incredibly charming to the point of being uncanny. He knew how to win people over, and was even very kind. Generally, Bundy was the ideal model you'd think of for an ordinary person, except his mind was far from normal. A bloodthirsty predator lay deep within him, always there. How could a young, well-mannered, decent man like Bundy become a cold-blooded serial killer without remorse? Was it impacts during his upbringing that transformed Bundy's nature? Or was he born cruel? There have been many recent studies in psychology and criminal behavior focusing on the brains of psychopaths, revealing commonalities in their brain deficiencies. This man is named Adrian Raine, a psychology professor at the University of Southern California. To observe the brains of murderers, he used PET, positron emission tomography, scans, a technique that allows him to see how brain functions work, combined with MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, to study brain structure, carefully comparing the function and structure of the brains of 41 murderers and 41 non-criminal controls. He discovered lower activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area above the eyes, and behind the forehead of murderers compared to the normal controls. This region is responsible for empathy, understanding, conscience, and moral standards, the so-called humanity we often refer to. The prefrontal cortex acts as a brake in the human brain, restraining the wild, animalistic side in each individual. If these individuals have impaired prefrontal function, they cannot control or regulate their emotions. This again raises a larger ethical issue for humanity. Should we continue researching and finding ways to intervene to improve the brains of psychopaths, turning them into normal people? Or what if we discover a newborn baby with a brain defect? Like a serial killer's, how should we raise and educate it? Returning to Ted Bundy's case, brain deficiencies combined with an extremely unhealthy environment created a true demon. Bundy was born not knowing who his biological father really was. Bundy's birth certificate reportedly acknowledged paternity, with a salesman, a former Air Force member named Jack Wolf. However, many reports claim that the biological father's name on Bundy's official documents was listed as unknown. For the first 3 years of his life, Bundy lived in a village in Philadelphia with his maternal grandparents, Samuel and Eleanor Cowell, who raised him as their own son to avoid social stigma, because Bundy was a child born out of wedlock. In 1987, Bundy revealed the truth, describing to lawyers that Samuel was a domineering, arrogant, conservative man who was racist, anti-Italian, anti-Catholic, and anti-Semitic, who beat his wife and even the family dog, and even hung neighbors. Cats by their hind legs. It seems the seed of violence was sown early in Bundy's mind, when he was still young, causing irreversible cognitive distortions later. This partly proves that psychopathic killers aren't born solely from brain deficiencies, but are mostly shaped by external environmental influences. Therefore, if a child has minor issues in the prefrontal cortex, we can be completely reassured if they are well cared for and educated. But is the impact of the growing environment sufficient to explain such cold-bloodedness? Is there something else driving them to commit such horrific acts that hasn't been found yet? Something harder to define lies within the human brain. Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in the physical components of the brain we just discussed, but in an invisible, intangible realm. In May 2006, Stephen Williams, a radio show host, disappeared mysteriously. After 2 weeks, a large force of security, personnel and police were mobilized for a massive search, but despite their efforts, they found no trace of him. When the case reached a dead end, a close friend of Williams decided to seek help from this woman, Angela Smith. This woman had a unique talent, remote viewing, commonly known as clairvoyance. Using her ability, Smith continuously used her perception to find clues related to the unfortunate victim. She saw lots of water, as if in the middle of an ocean. The information seemed to tell Smith that Williams had been killed by water. Using the information Angela Smith provided, the Los Angeles police found an unidentified body on the shore of Catalina Island. And of course, it was Stephen B. Williams. But the story didn't end here. Angela didn't just provide information about the victim. She also provided information about the murderer. After finding the body, she continued documenting the case into an investigative file, including who Williams had contacted and whether he had financial disputes with anyone. The killer of Stephen B. Williams was finally caught, and the biggest credit undoubtedly goes to the extraordinary clairvoyant ability of Angela Smith. The concept of clairvoyance has existed for a very long time and has been recorded in ancient documents. It's like being able to leave your body, travel to a distant place, and observe things there. even if they're halfway around the Earth. I know the concept of clairvoyance really has a lot of irrational aspects, but can you believe that people once thought of using this ability to gain advantage in the Cold War? Indeed, the Soviet Union during the Cold War invested tens of millions of US dollars to research phenomena related to psychology and neuroscience, especially clairvoyance. Of course, the Americans couldn't turn a blind eye. They felt they also had to quickly catch up with their rival in this field, and that was the motivation for the creation of a secret psychic spy force called Project Stargate. Project Stargate initially recruited about 20 people believed to have extrasensory abilities. They underwent special training and education, necessary scientific tests, and systematic practice to become members of this psychic spy unit. These individuals would sit in a dark room, place themselves in a hypnotic state, and then describe images of a distant location appearing in their minds. In 1976, the CIA asked Stargate to search for a Soviet plane shot down in a wilderness in Africa, after satellite imagery and other search efforts failed. Soon after, a Stargate member pinpointed the plane's location, helping the military find it quickly. Another mission that people believe Stargate was extremely successful in was spying on a Soviet naval base. Also in 1979, American psychics described the Soviets were building some kind of weapon that looked like a shark. And you know what? Shortly after, satellite images sent back showed the Soviet naval base storing this very object. Coincidentally, akula in Russian means shark. There were many other missions, proving that the psychic spy unit built by the CIA brought great benefits. With these successes, the US government poured $20 million into the project to expand its scale. However, later increasing skepticism, reduced budgets, and the CIA's wiretapping scandal led to its dissolution in 1995. Here we know for sure that clairvoyance works, and works more powerfully than illusion. But how it works is another question, much harder to answer. Modern espionage often relies on high-tech equipment like audio recorders, satellites, and computer systems to collect and process data. But according to those who practice clairvoyance, such electronic technology is unsuitable for the world's most complex computer, the human brain. People with clairvoyant abilities believe they can go to a very quiet place in their minds to practice and enhance this special ability. This means, like Savant syndrome, clairvoyance has always existed within every human being. It's like a natural intuition we often speak of. We could potentially focus on training and unlocking clairvoyant abilities in many people. If this happened, many people would ask, is the human brain capable of storing, processing, or retrieving necessary information? If we could see everything in the world, is there a way to scan the brain, accurately preserve received information, and then quickly and accurately retrieve that information whenever needed? A biotech startup has announced a controversial project, uploading data from the human brain to electronic computers. They have tried to preserve the brain, and even some believe that if we can't fight aging, there's no point in keeping our old, broken-down bodies. Instead, we should find a way to upload our entire brain, including all our thoughts, emotions, and memories onto a computer, then create a virtual paradise like in the TV show Black Mirror, and place that simulated brain into an avatar. Body. Uploading the brain to a computer relates to a field called whole brain emulation, WBE. There are already many technologies supporting this process, involving a three-legged stool of brain scanning and reconstruction, computing processing power and computer memory, and simulating virtual environments and virtual reality. Let's start with brain scanning, as researchers would also begin from there. Among these technologies, there's a bottleneck we need to solve to unlock this technology: the connectome. The connectome is a complete map of the brain, including all neurons and their complex connections. Currently, scientists have only established the connectome map of one animal species, the roundworm. The roundworm's brain has only about 302 neurons compared to the 86 billion neurons in the human brain. Not to mention, each neuron in our brain has about 10,000 connections from other terminals. The most advanced scanning technologies today, like fMRI or MEG, are simply not powerful enough to map the brain. Other methods offer more detailed brain scans but tend to damage or destroy the brain, especially for living human brains. The most promising scanning technology being researched is using electrodes with thousands of recording points. Currently, this technology is extremely invasive to the human body, meaning you'd need extensive surgery to implant these electrodes accurately inside the brain, which could then display thousands of neurons simultaneously. The gap from thousands to 86 billion neurons is still enormous. The bottleneck of the connectome still needs to be solved, no matter what brain scanning technology is used. After uploading all our memories and thoughts into data, scientists estimate it could reach up to zettabytes or 1021 bits of data, needing to be organized and processed. For comparison, 1 zettabyte equals 1,000 billion gigabytes, and our current brain scanning technologies only process data from individual neurons in real time. Scientists are still manually organizing and arranging this data. To read the entire connectome network, we will need advanced machine learning and data mining technologies. Computer processing power has grown exponentially over more than a century, and computer memory has similarly advanced. If everything continues as is, we will soon meet the necessary processing requirements. But when you upload your own brain to a computer, is it still really you? At the moment you create a copy of your brain, there are now 2 parallel brains existing. When your real brain dies and your body is cremated, what confirms that the mind you just uploaded into the computer is truly you? Or is it just another version of you beginning to exist? Unlocking the brain's potential could propel humanity forward millions of years in evolution, but it simultaneously opens many troubling consequences. It's truly terrifying. Do you think our brains are being held back? And would you be willing to unlock the deep hidden potential within, to advance to a new society, a higher level of life? If you've watched this entire video, I believe your brain truly has remarkable strength. Our video today ends here. See you in the next video on Mr. Bichu's journey to explore new secrets. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment if you'd like us to explore any topic next.